Hi, I'm John, and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be showing y'all just how simple and easy it is to add fractions. Alright, before we get started, I want y'all to look at this, and I want y'all to write this down. Alright, copy this. Pause this video right now and copy this down. Alright, let's get into adding fractions. Y'all already wrote down the number line at the beginning of the video, right? Remember, they go by twos. 2/16 make an eighth, 2/8 make a quarter, 2/4 make a half, 2/2 make a whole. Alright, so I'm going to start with fractions that are smaller than half. Alright, there's a reason I'm doing this, but I'm going to start with fractions that are smaller than half. Alright, so let's go 1/8 plus 1/8 plus, let's see, 3/16 equals 1/8 plus 3/16. What is 1/8 plus 3/16? Well, we got to turn this 8 into a 16, so we can just times it by 2, right? Again, go by 2's. So 8 times 2 is 16. What we do down here, we do up here. So 1 times 2 equals 2, right? So now we have 2/16. Now we can add it straight across, and we have 5/16, right? We can also, once you get to where you remember that number line and you practice, you can start doing this in your head. You can go 1/8, 3/16. I know it takes 2/16 to make an eighth. So I have 2/16 there. If I take 2 more 16ths from here and add over there, I have 2/8. 2/8 equals 4/16. I have a 16th left. That's 5/16. But you could do that in your head, right? You can go, well, if I take 2/16 from here and add it over there, that gives me 2/8 and leaves me with 1/16. So that's 4 5s, 5/16. You can, if you practice it, you can get to where you can do it in your head that way. Okay. You won't have to do the whole writing it down. All right, but until you get the practice in, you gotta go times 2 times 2, right? 16, 1/16, 5/16, right? Let's do another one smaller than half. Let's do 2 more that are smaller than half. All right, let's do 1/4, 1/4 plus, oh, let's see, it takes 2/8 to make a quarter, so let's do 3/8, right? We'll just say we're 1/8 shy of a half, right? So again, times by 2, right? We got to turn the 4 into an 8, right? So it's by 2 times 2, right? 2/4, right? We're 1 shy. 2/4 make a half. We know that 2/4 make a half, but we're at 3/8. 4/8 is half. How do we know? Because 4 is half of 8, right? We're 1/8 shy. So if we look at this, we already know. See, we already know we're at a quarter. Right? We were 1/8 shy. So we can add an eighth to our quarter and just say we have 4/8, but we'll get into that. 5/8. We have 4 times 2 equals 8. 1 times 2 equals 2. So we're 2/8. 2 plus 3 equals 5, and that's 5/8. Right? Let's do that again. 4 times 2 equals 8. 1 times 2 equals 2. 2/8. 2 plus 3 equals 5. And we keep our 8. Gives us 5/8. That's the math. Once you start getting to where you can do this stuff in your head, all right, you can look at this and go, okay, I got 3/8 here and I got 1/4 here. It takes 2/8 to make a quarter. And if you know it takes 2/8 to make a quarter, and you're adding 2/8 to 3/8, then you automatically know you have 5/8. Does that make sense? Right? Again, once you get to where you can do it in your head, you got to remember that number line. All right? But once you get to where you can remember that number line, and you can remember by twos, 2/4 equal an eighth. I mean a half. 2/4 equal a half. 2/8 equal a quarter. 2/8 equal a quarter. That means you have 2/8 here. And you're adding 3 more eighths. That's 5/8. So anyway, that's fractions that are smaller than half. Now let's get into fractions that are larger than half, because half plus half equals a whole, right? 2 halves equal a whole, right? So any two fractions that are larger than half, when you add them together, you're going to have a mixed number, and your whole number is going to be a 1 automatically, all right? If you don't know what a whole number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. The number when you count, those are whole numbers. Mixed numbers. If you don't know what a mixed number is a whole number with a fraction beside it. Okay? It could be 12 3/4, 1 1/2, right? Those are mixed numbers. Okay? When you're adding two fractions that are larger than half, your answer is automatically going to have 1 as its whole number, because you have 2 halves that you got to add together. Right? For example, uh, 5/8. We know 5/8 is larger than half because 4 is half of 8 and 5 is larger than 4, right? Now 3/4 plus 3/4. What am I equaling? I want to equal 1 plus 3/4. 5/8 plus 3/4, right? We know 5/8 is larger than half, again, because 4 is half of 8 and 5 is larger than 4, right? We know 3/4 is larger than half. How do we know? 2 is half of 4, and 3 is larger than 2, right? So both of these fractions are larger than half. And because we have half over here and half over here, we added together, we have 1 as our whole number, right? And our answer. Let's do the math first. Let's do the math part first, all right? We have to turn this into an 8. We have to match it there, right? So we're going to times by 2, right? We're going to times it by 2. We're going to turn it into an 8. We're going to times this by 2, right? Because what we do down here, we got to do up there, right? So we're going to make that a 6. So we have 6 8. So we have 11/8, right? If we divide 11 into 8, if we divide 8 into 11, we end up with 1. And then we end up with what? 3/8, right? 1 is our whole number. We did the math, right? We just did the math, right? Now, once you get to where you can know that number line by heart, and you know these by heart, you already know they're both larger than half, so you know your whole number is going to be 1. You have a quarter. If you subtract half from here, you end up with a quarter left over. Over here, if you subtract half, you have an 1/8 left over. You know it takes 2/8 to get to a quarter, and you got an 1/8 there to add, so that's 3/8. Your answer is 1 3/8. Even if you do the math, this is 8 and this is 6/8, 6/8, right? 11/8. 8 goes into 11 once. You got 3 left over. 1 3/8. Let's do this again. Again, this is simple. Right? If you haven't got a pencil or a pen with you and you can remember that number line, you can remember going by twos, right? If you can remember that and you don't have a pen or a pencil with you and you're like, okay, I don't know why you would, but I'm just saying if you had to add a couple of fractions, you can say, okay, well, 5/8 is 1/8 larger than half. So if I take half away, I'm stuck with 1/8 left. 3/4 is 1/4 larger than half. So if I take half away, I get 1/4 left over. Now I took them two halves and I put them over here as a whole number because half plus half is a whole, right? Now because I took half from here and I took half from here and I put them together, I give me my whole, right? I'm left with an 8 here and I'm left with 4 here. 2/8 make a quarter. And if 2/8 make a quarter, then I have 2/8 right here when I'm adding another 8. That's 3/8. Does that make sense? Let's do it again. Let's try to do a couple of other numbers that are larger than half. Let's go with 7/8 plus, let's see. Let's see. 11, let's go 11/16. Okay, let's go with 11/16. Our answer is going to be, or we already know what our answer is going to have a 1, right? And it's going to be 1/16, right? Your bottom number is always going to be your larger number out of your answer, okay? Your fraction answer, part of your answer. It's going to be that larger number, okay? But let's get into 8 times 2 equals 16. 8 times 2 equals 16. 7 times 2 equals 14. We have 14/16. We now have 25/16. We now have to take 16 and divide it into 25. Well, we know it'll only go once. All right? So how many more do we need to get to 25? 9, right? Because you got to add 4 to get to 20. You add 4 to that 16 to get to 20. But you got to get up here to 25, right? So you got to add 5 more. So 4 plus 5 is 9, right? So it's going to be 9/16. Right? You're dividing 25 minus 16, right? Well, to get the 20 from 16, you got to add 4. But you got to go from 20 to 25, so you got to add 5 more, right? That's your 9. You can do the math. You can do the 16 like this, right? You can do that if you want. That's up to you. But let's do it like this, okay? Let's take half from here. Subtract half from there, right? If we subtract half from 7/8, we know, right? Listen, we know 7/8 is 1/8 shy of a whole. 8/8 is a whole. If 7/8 is 1/8 shy of a whole, and you take half of that away, then you are 1/8 shy of half now, right? You would be 1/8 shy of a half, right? If you subtract half from there, right? So what would that give you? Well, you know 4 is half of 8, right? Look at your number line. Look at your number line there. Look at what you wrote down at the beginning of the video, right? 4 is half because 4 is half of 8. If you're doing this in your head, all right, you get practice. 7/8 is 1/8 shy of a whole. 8/8 is a whole. If you take half of that away, then you are 1/8 shy of half, which means you have 3/8 left. because you just subtracted half from that. Now you got to subtract half from this, 11/16. Right? You know 11/16 is larger than half because 8/16 is half. 8 is half of 16. That means 8/16 is half. Look at your number line. That means you're left with how many sixteenths? 3/16, right? 9, 10, 11, right? That means you're left with 3/16. Now here you got your whole. You took half from here and half from here. You added them together. You got your whole number. Now you know you have 3/8 left here and 3/16 left here. How many sixteenths does it take to make an eighth? It takes 2/16 to make an eighth. So if you take 2 of these sixteenths from here and add them over here, you now have 4/8. And over here you have 1/16. All right? So how many sixteenths do you have now? Because you got to keep this big number, right? Takes 2/16 to make a eighth. You got 4 of them. 2, 4, 6, 8. Plus 1, 9/16. This seems like a lot longer to go through math-wise, but when you don't have something to write down with, you can do it in your head. I can do it in my head this way. It's a lot easier for me to do it in my head this way when I haven't got anything to write down with, right? Or even when I'm writing it down, it's easier for me to do it this way. I remember all I have to do is take half from there, and it leaves me with 3/8. I got 3/16 over here. I know it takes 2/16 to make an eighth. And if I take 2/16 from here to put over here, that gives me another 8. That gives me 4/8. And leaves me with 1/16 over here. And then 4/8, there's 2/16 per eighth, right? So that's 2, 4, 6, 8/16 plus 1, that's 9/16. Remember, you have to keep this number right here, right? And as long as you remember you got to keep that larger number, you can do it in your head. Again, you can practice it. Let's do this again. Let's find a couple of more numbers to do this with. Hopefully I'm not writing up too high and it's showing up in the video. Let's go with 5/8. Let's go with let's go with 9/16. Okay? We know 5/8 is larger than half. How do we know 5/8 is larger than half? Because, again, 4 is half of 8, and 4/8 is half. Look on your number line. 9/16. We know 9/16 is a 16th larger than half. How do we know? Because 8/16 is half. Look at your number line. And because they're both larger than half, we already know our answer is going to have a 1 as a whole number. Now, we can do this the long way. We can say 8 times 2 is 16, and 5 times 2 is 10, and have 10/16. We now have 9/16, 19/16 as our answer. 10 plus 9 is 19, and 16 plus 16, we keep our bottom number, right? 16, right? 9/16, improper fraction, right? So 16 goes into 9 once. What are you left with? 3/16, right? Because to go from 16 to 19, that's 17, 18, 19, right? That's 3. That's 3/16, right? So the answer is 1 3/16, right? That's the long way of doing it. for me, that's no way to do it. But there's another way, right? Again, you know 5/8 is larger than half because 4/8 is half. And that's 5/8. That's 1/8 larger. So if you take half, if you subtract half from 5/8, that gives you 1/8 left. Again, 4/8 is half, and you're 1/8 larger than half. So if you subtract half, you're left with 1/8. 9/16. 9/16 is 1/16 larger than half. 8/16 is half. 9/16 is 1/16. So if you take half, if you subtract half from 9/16, that leaves you with 1/16. You add that half and that half together, that gives you your whole number. Right? You subtracted that half from there and that's half from there, and you added them together for your whole number. Automatically, if it's over half, it's a whole number. You know that's right. So what are you left with? You're left with an 1/8 and a 1/16. You know it takes 2/16 to make an 1/8, but you don't have 2/16 here to make an 1/8. You have 1/8. You have 2/16 here because it takes 2/16 to make it. So that's 2/16, 3/16. And your answer is 1 3/16. Let's do that again. Again, you can rewind, watch. You don't have to, watch all the way through. You can rewind and rewatch what you need to watch and pause and practice. All right. Again, we're going to do the long way. 8 times 2 equals 16. 5 times 2 equals 10. All right. So we have 10/16. Now we have 19/16. We divide 19 by 16. We get 1. 19 minus 16, that's 3. So we have 3/16 because we have a remainder of 3, right? So we have 1 3/16 as our answer, right? 1 equals 1 3/16. That's the long way of doing it, right? Right? But if you can remember, again, 2/16 make an 1/8, 2/8 make a quarter, 2 quarters make a half, and 2 halves make a whole. If you can remember that, then you can start doing it in practice. You can start doing this in your head. Because you can say 5/8, that's 1/8 larger than a half. 9/16, that's 1/16 larger than a half. We know because 4/8 is half and 8/16 is half, right? So we know this is 1/8 higher and 1/16 higher, so we know our 2 halves would equal 1. Now what we got to do is add these together. Well, we know 2/16 equals an 1/8. So that's 2/16, 3/16. Does that make sense? Let's try a couple of other numbers here. Let's go with 3/4. No, let's go with 5/8. Right? No, we just did 5/8. We just did 5/8. Let's do 3/4. Right? Plus, geez, I don't know. 3/4 plus, so it'd be 9, 10. Let's go 11/16. Okay. Now there are numbers that are smaller than 16ths. Okay. On your number line, you got 16ths, right? There are 30 seconds. Okay. 2 30-seconds make a 16th, but we're not getting into that. We're not going to go that small. Okay. We're just not. We're not going to go that tiny. All right. We're going to keep it up. It'll work the same way. It goes by 2s. It takes 2 30-seconds to make a 16th, but we're not doing it. But remember my previous videos where I kept telling you, right? Understanding fractions. If you're watching this video without watching my very first video on fractions, you need to watch, because if you don't understand what fractions are, you don't know what fractions are, then this is not going to do you any good. You need to watch my first video, because I told you the bottom numbers how many pieces there are, the top numbers how many pieces you have, right? So, all right, so let's get into this. 11/16. How do we know 11/16 is larger than half? Well, let's do the long way first. Let's do the long way first. We got to make 4/16. We got to make both of these numbers the same, right? We want to make a smaller number the same as that large. So we're going to times by 2. 4 times 2 is 8, right? Now 8 times 2 is 16, right? You're going by 2s. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. It's 4 times 4 equals 16, right? But you're still kind of going by 2s when you think about it, right? But let's go ahead and say 4 times 4 equals 16. And 4 times 3 equals 12. So now we have 12/16 over here, right? We now have 11. We have 23, right? 10 plus 10 is 20, plus 3 is 23, right? So now we have 23/16. We now have to take 16 and divide it into 23. Goes once, 16, right? 1, 13, 7 over 16, because it's 1 and 7/16. 7 is the remainder, right? So it goes over 16th, right? That's the long way of doing it. I hate doing it the long way myself, but I'm going to show you an easier way. I think I moved my board. Once you start remembering them in your head, again, 3/4. If you take half away from 3/4, you end up with 1/4. 11/16. Again, 8/16 is half. So you've got 3/16 more than half, right? So if you take half from there and half from there and you add them together, you got 1. Now, how many 16ths does it take to make a quarter? Right? Well, it takes 2/16 to make an eighth. Right? And 2/8 to make a quarter. So, you got to break this down. Right? I know I got 3/16 here, but how many 16ths do I have in that quarter? Well, I know that it takes 2/8, right, to make a quarter, right, and 2/16 to make an eighth. So that's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, it'll be 7. Jesus. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting tired. All right. We know that this is 1/4, and this is 3/16. We take half from here and half from here, added them together, we got 1. We know it takes 2/16 to make an eighth. Right, and 2/8 to make a quarter. Right, so that's 2/16 to make an eighth. That's 2, 4, right, 5, 6, 7. 2/16 to make an eighth. 2/8 to make a quarter. That's 4/16. 4 plus 3 equals 7, right? 2/8 to make a quarter. 2/8 make a quarter. And 2/16 make an eighth. So that's 2, 4, 16, and then 7 because you got 3 over here. That's how I do it in my head. I'm gonna try one. I'm gonna do one more here, and then I'm gonna call it quits on this video because I'm getting really tired here. Well, actually, no. I'm gonna do one more, and then there's something else I'm gonna cover real quick. All right. So let's do. Well, let's do. Gosh, it's so hard because you're so limited on numbers here. Let's go with 5/8 again. All right. Whoops, sorry, excuse me. Plus, well, 7/16. Okay. No, not 7/16, because we want it larger than half. Right. So let's go with 11/16. We want it larger than half. 7/16 is less than half because 8 is half of 16, right? So 5/8, we know 5/8 is larger than half because 4/8 is half. So if we take half away from here, we're left with 1/8. This is 11/16. We know that 8/16 is half. So this would be 3/16. We know it takes 2/16 to make an 1/8. So that would be 2/16 plus 3/16. That's going to give us 1 5/16. Now, that's how I do it. Now we can do it the long way. Okay? Let's do it the long way. Eight times 2 equals 16. 5 times 2 equals 10. 10 plus 11 is 22. 21. 16th. 16th divided into 21 goes once. There's 16. We go like that. We go 11. We go 5. So our answer is going to be 1 5/16. Are y'all seeing that? I'm getting tired, but I'm going to do this again. 5/8. We know it's 1/8 shy. We know it's 1/8 more of a half. 4/8 is half. So if we take half away, we got 1/8. 11/16. We know 8/16 is half. So we know we're left with 3/16. We know it takes 2/16 to make an 1/8. So that's 2/16 plus 3/16. That's 1 5/16. Because we take half from here, add it, we get our 1. And then we have 2/16 here plus 3/16. That gives us our 5/16. And there we have that. Now, I'm going to cover one more thing real quick. I don't like doing this because thirds screw everything up. If you have 2/3 plus 3/4, you have a 1 whole as your answer. Whole number 1 is your answer. 2/3 is larger than half. Half of 3/3 would be 3/3 cut in half would be 3/6. Right? I hate doing thirds. This is why you don't see sockets and bolts and stuff like that measured in thirds. They're always in quarters. You'll see them in 30 seconds. You'll see them in eighths. You'll see them in quarters. You'll see them in halves. You'll see them in 3/4. You'll see them in 1 inch. You'll see them in 1 3/4. You won't see socket sizes in thirds because thirds are too hard to keep. There's a lot. Thirds go 3 by 3s. 3, 9, 12, 15, 18, or no, Yeah, 18. It's too much to keep track of. Like, what is 5/3? Well, 5/3 is going to be larger than 2/3. 5/3 is actually going to be a 1 and 2/3 or something, right? Because 3 over 3 is a whole, right? So it's yeah, you have to do the long math when you're dealing with thirds, okay? So you're going to have to times this by 4. You're going to have to times these two numbers together and get 12, right? 3 times 4 equals 12. 2 times 4 equals 8. 4 times 3 equals 12. 3 times 3 equals 9, right? Equals 9. So now you have 8/12, 9/12. You have 17/12, right? 17/12. 12 divided into 17 goes once. 7 minus 2 equals 5. So you have 1 and 5/12. Which doesn't make sense. What did I screw up? Because, yeah, no, it's right. It's right. It makes sense. See, that's why I don't like. I was thinking 5/3, but it's 5/12. 5/12. That's less than half. 5/12 is less than half because 6/12 would be half. But that's if you had 6/12. 6/12 would be equal to half, 1/2. But this is why we go by halves and twos, because it's so much easier. But anyway, yeah, thirds can screw everything up. The only time you're really going to come, really the only time you're ever going to be doing something like this, 2/3 plus 3/4 or 5/12, right, plus 1/2. The only time you're going to come across anything like this is going to be in school somewhere. Well, I hope you liked and enjoyed that video, and if you did, please hit the like, subscribe, and share and notification bell. It would help me out greatly. And remember, knowledge is a good thing. Truth in knowledge is an even better thing. And true knowledge, that's power.